Hey, thanks for joining me. And nowadays with food, the word organic and free range get thrown around quite a bit. But today we go right to the source. Yep. But before we get into that, I got a couple things like I normally do. Live Rishi. These guys been supporting the show since day one. I've been using this product longer than that. They make high quality CBD product. My personal favorite, 1,000 milligram tincture. You want a good night's sleep, everybody? Check it out. LiveRishi.com. Use the code word table. Let them know I sent you, and you're looking at 50% off. Yep. And also my website for the show, Walt'sKitchenTable.com. Would love for you to go over there and spend a few minutes and click around. Get a hold of me with any questions or just to say hello. I love it when people reach out. Now, on to the show. Welcome to Walt's Kitchen Table, where I feature captivating stories from fascinating people. Farmer Dave, super fascinating guy. I enjoyed our conversation very much. He's an organic farmer, and his story is awesome. But some of the things we talk about is the impact on the world economy and population with mass farming and other things in that nature. Also, he describes a difference between a feedlot and what he does, pasture grazing. Gets really detailed about that, and I found that awesome. I really enjoyed that part, and I know you will too. We get into a ton of other stuff as well. And the name of his farm, Wrong Direction Farms, it's really great story on how he came up with that name. And, well, you know what? I'm just going to let him explain it to you. Let's get to it. All right, dude. So we're recording. Anything you say is now going to be on the internet.
All right.
All right. Are you scared?
A little bit, yeah.
Don't be.
First timer.
All right. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on. Huge fan of what you got going on up there. I'd love to get a meat delivery from you guys. And, it's awesome to have you on because I am very interested. One, where'd you come up with a name? I know you've written that in some your farm blogs, and the people listening on the ticker, the website is wrongdirectionfarm.com for the people just hearing it audible wise. Jump over, seriously, get a hold of this guy, Dave, the farmer. Wrong Direction Farm. The blogs are amazing. This guy, it's crazy, dude. How do you come up with this shit? You live it, right?
Yeah, you got to live it. My wife and I came up with the idea for the farming. I guess when our first son was born, we started to rethink the way we were feeding our kids. I guess, being a new father, right? You kind of look at the food you're eating and everything you're doing, and having a baby helps you reevaluate your life.
Oh yeah, mine's drastically changed in the last 5 months, as you can hear in the background. They're handling him right now.
Yeah.
How? When was your son? You said the oldest child's son?
Yeah. So now he's 16.
Awesome.
He's like a half inch shorter than me. So I think he's just cresting 6 foot right now, and he's catching up in every way.
Does your wife look up at him?
Yeah.
Does he?
Yeah. He passed her years ago.
Oh, that's awesome. I tell Val, I said, wait till you look up at Logan and go, now you listen here.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Terry.
Yeah. So when he was little, he had a lot of allergies to food, and we started, rethinking the types of food we were feeding him that we were feeding ourselves. We started buying some stuff from some farmers. We were in northern New Jersey at the time. And
where in New Jersey?
We were living in Butler.
Mm-hmm.
I lived there for about 10 years. I grew up in Morris County and over in West Orange. So yeah.
Oh man, that West Orange, that's my territory. We live in Montclair, so not too far from there.
Yeah. So I was definitely not from a farming background at all. But
different kind of farming down there.
Yeah. So in 2011, we moved up here to Canajoharie, which is kind of in the middle of upstate New York, just along the New York Thruway. we're in the Mohawk Valley, and I had the opportunity. I was working in the wireless industry, but I had this opportunity to move to several different offices. So I picked the one that had the best access to farmland nearby, and
So you
moved up
didn't have you didn't have a farm at that time.
no, we didn't.
Okay, cool.
So we bought a place that had been really vacant for about 10 years. It really hadn't been farmed intensely since the 1950s when their barn burned down. This family had kind of lived in it. They had cut hay on it, but they hadn't really done much else with it over the years. And then the old folks who lived here died. The house was vacant for a while. Nobody wanted to buy it, and we were the suckers who bought it.
Well, was there some superstition about them dying in the house or something, or what?
No, it's just it's not particularly good land. It's hard to work with. It's kind of steep. It's the way the farm is laid out. It's not convenient for grain farming. There's some wet spots on it. It actually turns out to be a really good pasture farm, and we can get into that later. But one of our goals was to get into grass-fed, organic, pasture-raised. We really became convinced that was some of the best food for us. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to try some of this stuff myself. I had always been hands-on. So my day job had been an engineer, but I had worked all through high school and college in sheet metal work. I had done some construction work. I ended up building houses. I was always doing stuff with my hands kind of person. Mm-hmm. And farming seemed like that would be like a never-ending job that would require continuous involvement and
well, you
all
found
sorts
that
of interesting new skills to learn.
You found out that's true as hell, huh?
Yeah.
So other than you wanting to raise your own stuff, right, you had no other interest in farming? Like that was a catalyst? You didn't think of it before that?
When I was in high school, maybe a little bit, I used to look into, I was really interested in gardening back then, but no, I really, farming had not been on the map for me for a long time. But I just got kind of stir crazy in engineering and living in suburbia, and I needed a bigger challenge. Mm-hmm. So I bit off a big challenge.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Was there anything working on that farm when you bought it? It was just overgrown and everything? Like, what was the condition of that place?
Yeah, it was really a large part of it was overgrown. The neighbor had been cutting hay on a few of the fields, so they were at least kind of mowed down. But I don't know if do you know about making hay? I mean, hay is just a lot of people don't know what hay is or whatever. They ask me about it, so maybe I should explain. But hay is just basically you're mowing the grass that grows on the farm, and then you bale it up, and then you feed it to animals in the winter. But when he went around the pastures and mowed the hay, kind of every year, the trees would encroach a little more on the pastures, and the pastures would get a little smaller. And so we had a lot to do just to get the fields back into their original shapes. But there were no fences, no water lines. The house was falling down. It's still falling down. We still use an outhouse.
No, do you really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Get out of here.
We heat this place with wood, and the bedrooms freeze at night in the winter.
And you still use an outhouse?
Yeah.
No, that is awesome, dude.
Every penny that's possible. Every penny has been put into the farm, and nothing has been put into like making things nice here. So.
Oh, so hey, that's a true entrepreneur mindset where you put everything right back into business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, but I think when some people arrive, they're kind of expecting kind of a Martha Stewart farm. And they get here and they're like, oh, this is a little rough.
This is her half sister's farm.
That's right.
Betty Stewart.
Yeah. There's a hole in the roof. There's the siding's falling off the house and the windows are cracked. Yeah.
Oh, so you make sure that you don't post that kind of stuff on Instagram, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, by the cropping.
Yeah, right.
Cropping is good.
Filters are great, aren't they?
Yeah.
Hey, the thing too, speaking of Instagram, that is such an awesome page you have.
Thank you.
The one thing though I wanted to bring up, and I hope you don't mind me with some unsolicited advice, or not advice, just my thoughts.
Yeah.
Because I want to really get into you selling the meat and stuff. Because again, we enjoy it. You don't post much about that. Is there a reason?
So I don't have much of an Instagram following. We only started Instagram a few months ago. I think it was during the winter.
Yeah.
And when I look at the people who follow, this is interesting. With Facebook, it's especially true, but Instagram is true. The very few of the people who follow us on Instagram are customers. Very few people who like us or like anything are actually customers. I see a lot of farmers on there. I see a handful of customers, and I see a lot of people I don't know.
Well, yeah. So wouldn't you want to, like, every fifth post something like, we have, we sell this, or call to get this delivered or something? Or are you just not used to using?
Yeah. In talking with other farms, I don't find that anyone finds Instagram or Facebook to be valuable selling tools.
Oh,
it's interesting. The way markets work on Facebook and Instagram, and the types of customers that really interact with posts there don't seem to be the sort of people that interact with email marketing for farms. And this is something I found true in talking with a lot of other farmers.
Wow.
It's good to keep. It seems like Facebook and Instagram are really good for keeping a farm alive in the
digital world,
short-term memory of your customers. Like, oh yeah,
Okay.
they're still there. But the type of people who click over to buy do not seem to be the same people that
wow. I would
click over from web searches and from email marketing.
So your email marketing and your just them searching on the web, getting to your website, which is great, by the way. That's where you get most of your business.
That's what we found.
I really, man, I would have to tell you, I really think if you put, just from my experience, I was in this whole digital world for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think if you every week, once a week, or even once every 2 weeks, post that hey, to put it bluntly, buy my shit.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd see a lot. I think you'd see a spike in that. I really do. So I don't know. I love your Instagram, and it's awesome. But it shocked me that there's not a lot of, hey, we sell what we sell.
Yeah,
I don't see that.
Yeah, we've tried some stuff with Google Ads, and we've tried Facebook ads. So we haven't done Instagram directly, but we've done Facebook ads that copy over to Instagram.
Well, I'm not talking. I'm talking about organic reach, though.
Yeah.
Not even spending any money. Just change one of your posts up, put a little artwork on it that stands it out from, like, the chickens and the cows and stuff.
Yeah.
So when because the thing is, like, when I scroll through it, when I saw the box, it doesn't say, I have to read the post.
Yeah.
And most people ain't going to read the post.
Yeah.
We all know that, right? So if you actually have some words on the post, on that picture, saying call us for home delivery, I don't know. That's just take what you want, dude. I don't mean to get in your business, but that's just my thought. It just shocked me that there wasn't on there. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm being the farmer here, right? Like, so I wear so many hats, and trying to do the digital marketing side, trying to write, trying to do the farming side, the order packing and the delivery, and coordinate with the butchers, and occasionally be the shit shoveler. It's just hard to to do anything well.
So come in at 11 o'clock at night, since you've been up at 4 in the morning, like, okay, now I got to make an Instagram post.
Time to make the Instagram.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so your boy's born. You want to give him some homegrown stuff.
Yeah.
You bought the farm. You're still using outhouse.
Yeah.
And that's where we left off.
Yeah. So that was about 2011. We moved up here.
Awesome.
Started with, a few pigs. What I really thought I was going to do, I thought I was going to be a pastured pig farmer. And that was my first love. Over the years, it's kind of shifted as to what we do. But We started with a few pigs, got a few chickens, maybe 100 chickens the first year, probably 10 pigs. Then we picked up a few calves from some of the neighbors. There's a dairy farm down the road that had some bull calves that they were going to sell at an auction. So we bought them and raised them, and just started building the infrastructure and making as many mistakes as possible. That was our strategy, to get all our mistakes out and as fast as possible. We still make an awful lot of mistakes.
Oh yeah.
But that kind of fed into the name of the farm, Wrong Direction Farm. The name came from a poem by Wendell Berry, who is a poet farmer from Kentucky, and he's got a poem called the Lunatic Farmer. I'm sorry, the Mad Farmer.
Mad Farmer.
And he's at the end. It talks about just being. It's about being contrary, not meeting people's expectations. And he's got the line at the end, just be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. And so we took that little bit, and we certainly make more tracks than necessary. And we definitely make a lot in the wrong direction, but it's proved to be I don't know. It's been a name that's grown on me. Because it makes people ask, like, what kind of name is that?
Sure, it's a conversation.
Yeah,
conversation starter, right? My first thought would be wrong direction because you're not going for volume and pumping hundreds of, you know what I mean? Going where you're doing it the right, what you consider the right way, feeding them organically and keeping it that size, so technically you're going the wrong direction.
Right. We're taking what the industry and the market says is the right way to do things, and we're kind of about facing and saying, what, we don't need to chase the volumes. We don't need to just make everything bigger and blander and just the same as everything else, right? There's ways we can farm that can involve people rather than kind of eliminating people out of the process. Of ways we can farm that take care of the land and take care of the community around us. And a lot of those things just aren't valued in the food that ends up in the supermarket.
I listened to a couple of years ago a podcast, How It Was Made. You ever hear that?
No.
So it's just like the title of it, and they got talking about the chicken farming, and how it started, why it started, and how it got to where it is. And that's a long conversation. And the part that got me was, why are chickens all white? Their feathers are all engineered to be white. Do you know why?
Well, they're not engineered, but they've been selected. But yeah.
And in the huge, farms. Do you know why they're all white?
I think because it looks better in the packaging.
Yep, it looks good in the packaging under the neon or the fluorescent light in the grocery store.
Right.
Because if there's different color feathers, there's discoloration in the meat, and people are like, "Oh, I don't want to buy that."
Yeah,
and they
the
think
pin feather, they call that. It's like the base of the follicle of the feather leaves a little coloring in the breast meat.
And people are like, "Oh, what's wrong with that?" And they didn't buy it.
Yeah.
And I just thought that alone tells a lot about society. That's crazy. I figured
that's why we only raise for our Thanksgiving turkeys. We only raise white turkeys.
For that reason too?
Yeah, because people are too weirded out by seeing the little flecks of color. And we try, there's a lot of things we try to explain to people, but eventually we just, it's easier. Let's just do white turkeys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we raised some bronze turkeys and some white ones, but the bronze ones we use for ground turkey. So you don't get to see the color.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating that turkeys are the same way. Feathers are feathers, right? Meat, feathers. Crazy that we run into that. But anyway, whoo. And do you raise turkeys just for Thanksgiving sales?
No, actually, we've found that we we can sell more turkeys with that. There's a better market for ground turkey than for Thanksgiving. So we probably do a quarter of our turkeys for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And then you can't, a few we sell for Christmas, but just a tiny handful.
Okay.
And you can't really sell a whole turkey any other time of the year. And then, but a lot of people like the ground turkey. We've been starting to find people who like drumsticks and the breast and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
for
actually
sure.
turned into a good opportunity for us.
Good. Good.
Yeah, pasture raised turkey. And I mean, don't tell the chickens this, but I like turkeys better than chickens. We raise more chickens on the farm than we do turkeys, but turkeys are just so much more interesting. And, they're a North American bird, right?
Mhm.
Chickens originally came from Asia
Mhm.
and kind of made their way west from there. They're originally a small jungle bird.
Yep. Yep.
But turkeys are a bird that's from our climate, from our area. They've been bred for living on farms. People have selected them over years for ones that don't fly away so much, and ones that grow a little better and all that. But they're not as far removed from their ancient predecessors as the chickens are.
Chickens.
And they're really good grazing animals. It's just so amazing to watch our flock of turkeys when I every few days my daughter and I move them to a new patch of pasture, and they just move through it and they just mow down the grass, they mow down the weeds. And because they're tall, right, they can like get their necks just kind of extends like giraffe-like, right? And they can start pecking the leaves off of plants, and they just strip things right down to the stalks.
See, that's interesting. That I bet you most people didn't know that that's what turkeys eat.
Yeah.
I wonder if most people would think that they're like chickens, where they peck and hunt that way.
Yeah, so they like bugs just like chickens do. They like scratching around for seeds and all the things that all the chickens do. But I think if you were to put them side by side, a turkey is more grazing oriented than a chicken is.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's just a slight difference. Somebody told me that like the difference between chickens and turkeys is like the difference between Legos and Duplos. Those giant bricks for toddlers, right?
Yeah.
But it's not quite the same. There are lots of little distinctions between them. Turkeys, they tend to herd very well. So if you get a bunch of turkeys that are loose, you can kind of get behind them and herd them into a new pasture. Where chickens, they just scatter all over the place.
Yeah, you ain't gonna do that with no damn chicken.
It's like herding cats, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we had a little hobby farm back in Colorado.
Okay.
My ex-wife and I, and we had chickens, rabbits, and I grew up on a farm, by the way, and then got away from that. And then my ex-wife out and let me back up. I grew up in upstate New York. Oneida.
Where? I guess I should find out where that is.
Oneida.
Okay.
You know where that is?
Neighbors.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You ever hear of Oneida Silversmith?
Yeah.
Yep. So that was the big industry, and other than farming and Hood Dairy, that was the big industry where I grew up.
Were your family part of that big Oneida colony way back?
No. We're from Germany, and my grandparents moved over here and did the whole farming thing. Started that way. Okay. And we lost our farm when I was like 1. It burnt down.
Really?
But my cousin and uncle and the whole community had farms, so I did that a little bit, here and there growing up. And then when I moved out to Colorado, got away from all that. And then my ex-wife, we had a nice plot of land right in city limits, and she's like, I want to raise rabbits and chickens, and we got some ducks. And chickens, man, I thought they were fascinating. Ducks are pretty fascinating too.
Yeah.
Do you have any ducks?
No, not right now.
Yeah,
I've had in the past, but not right now.
Yeah, they're kind of fun to watch.
Yeah,
they're just kind of like cool. They like hang out. And chickens are all scatterbrained, as everybody knows. But rabbits were good. You guys do anything with rabbits?
No.
And,
rabbits were the gateway drug for us back when I was living in New Jersey.
Yeah,
we started with some rabbits.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And then in I want to get into this with you too, is predators.
Mhm.
Do you deal with a lot of predators?
We do not deal with predators anymore. We have a dog who does,
Oh, perfect.
and yeah, she's she's a Maremma, which is a an Italian sheepdog.
Okay.
Um, they're bred. I mean, they would live out with the sheep and
Hmm.
kill anything that came near their flock.
Okay,
And
cool.
yeah, so she's 3 years old. We got her from a good breeder, and she lives out with the chickens and the turkeys. She's bonded with them, and yeah, she doesn't let hawks or eagles. I mean, we have pretty much everything here,
Hmm.
and everything likes to eat a chicken dinner,
I was going to
and
say.
she wants to. She keeps them safe. We don't lose anything to them anymore. We used to have owls attacking the turkeys,
Hmm.
and we used to have occasional raids by foxes. But
Do you
yeah, with
deal
that
with
dog,
you ever deal with raccoons at all?
um, very early on, we haven't had raccoons come by recently. I'm not sure why. Yeah.
That was the big predator in the city limits. Once in a while, a skunk or a fox,
Yep.
but every damn night, dude, them raccoons were trying to get the rabbits, and they had no qualm of just coming in the yard, no fear, nothing.
Yeah.
And
And they're
so,
strong. They can tear cages apart. And yeah.
yep, climb anywhere, and they're very, they can use their hands like we do almost.
Yep.
And so what I used to do, because you can't trap them in the city limits, I used to live trap them and then just toss them in a 55-gallon drum of water. And then I would take the rabbit parts and those down to a friend of ours who had pigs, and pigs would make short work of all of that.
Yeah.
They'd gobble all that up, not even blink.
Yeah.
Big old hogs. And speaking of predators, the friends with the hogs said that with a hog, the smell tends to let predators know don't come around here. He said
Yeah.
that helps keep predators away. I
Yeah. I
didn't know
think when
that
we used to
either.
have pigs here, we had fewer pesky things stopping by.
They just
Yeah.
they just know that a pig is territorial and not afraid of much of anything, I
Yeah.
think.
They can be big and
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
With predators, that's an interesting topic. Because in some ways, I do not want to have um, a war with predators.
Yeah.
I want to create an environment on the farm where predators exist here too,
Well,
right?
it's a
And
it- just like
I think having the dog is really nice because she keeps everything out of the pasture where her animals are. Everything she's guarding, nothing comes in there. They know she's in there. The coyotes run around that field. We can see them just bypassing that whole field. They're not messing with her.
no, that's
Um,
awesome.
but while we can keep the rest of the natural system going with all the deer and the uh, some of the smaller animals that are prey animals, and we can have the predator animals. Everything can exist on the farm. We don't need to go through and exterminate everything
Mm-mm.
just to make sure our farm continues to be successful.
No,
And
there's definitely ways around that. I mean, look at
yeah,
200 years ago, they dealt with it too. It's an ecosystem. It's a balance. It happens
yeah,
every day, everywhere. Just because
yeah,
you come and take 100 acres and start plowing it doesn't mean that coyote or that bear or that deer knows any different. It's like,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
and
So I'd like to, I like that idea of the ecosystem, and I like to look for opportunities to keep ecosystems rolling and try to enhance them
mhm.
through
well,
through
just
the
like,
activities.
cats in the barn,
Yeah.
when we were growing up, they kept snakes and mice away, but you still needed the snakes and mice to take care of the spiders and everything else. So again, it's the chain, it's
Yeah.
the ecosystem. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't have too many cats because then it wipes out all that, and then everything else gets overgrown, and then you're like, oh man, and you're always battling with it, right?
Yep.
You're always trying to figure it out. But yeah, that reminds me, out in Colorado, they were building the Denver International Airport, and they built it out in way out in the desert, because Colorado Springs and Denver are desert mountain.
Right.
It's 7,000 feet, but it's a desert. And they built the airport, and not too long after that, people were going out buying land and building houses out that way. And then all of a sudden there's this huge uproar that they want the airport moved because it's bothering their home. And I was like, so when you were digging your basement, the 770 airplanes that flew over you during the day, taking off and landing, didn't give you an idea that there's an airport nearby? Now it's there. So I bring that story up because I feel that a lot of people do that with animals. So they go and buy this piece of property out in the middle of nowhere in the woods or whatever, and then get all upset that the bear lands on their front porch.
Right.
So I could, dude, that bear's been going there for how many years? And all of a sudden he came around the corner.
Deer eating your garden and your flowers.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, that deer, it's got to go. No. How do you figure that? Just because you bought the land, that thing doesn't know any different.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what brought me up about predators and where you're at and how you're dealing with them. Just because of the volume of things that you have going on, I'd assume you had some kind of predators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the chickens and the turkeys are the ones where we need protection, and then of course we have the grass-fed beef herd, and the cattle. They really don't need protection from anything. Yeah.
You keep the calves and stuff. Now, do you breed them and building up your herd and all that?
No, so this is a good opportunity for a community. My neighbor, Mike, has a herd of cows, and he has a few bulls, and he sells us all of his calves every year.
Oh, okay.
And so they just come right next door to us, and then we raise the calves up until they're butchered. So that's about 2 years on our farm. Yeah.
So what do you get? Oh, so they're not 2 years. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. And then so you get them.
We get them just after they're weaned.
Okay.
So they're usually born in the spring, and then they're weaned sometime around Christmas, New Year's. We get them just at the beginning of the winter.
And then raise them for a couple of years, and then that's your beef supply.
Right. So it's worked out really well for a project between us and the neighbor. And then, just a second.
No problem. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. And then, because they're grass fed, it takes about 2 years for us to do this phase we call the finishing phase. Corn fed beef is raised a lot faster, but it takes quite a while to raise a steer or a heifer up to full size on just pasture, just grass.
Yeah, that's a lot of grass.
It is.
Yeah.
Actually, it's compared to a lot of other parts of the world, it's not a lot of grass because we grow so much per acre here in the Northeast.
And then, do you have multiple season pastures?
Yeah. So what we do is we have fenced out all of our fields with electric fence, and we have electric fence on flexible reels. So Rachel, my wife, is she handles everything related to the cattle, and she herds them every morning. She breaks them into a new pasture. So she breaks down the old fence, moves them into a new section. We try to keep relatively tight sections so the cattle all hit the grass at the same time, graze it down. They trample a lot of it, and then the next day they move on to a fresh patch of grass.
So you move them every day?
Every day.
Wow.
Yeah. And what that allows us to do is allows us to keep the very best grass in front of the cattle each day. And they're only taking a few bites of that grass, and they're trampling a lot of it, and then they're dropping their manure everywhere over it, and then they move on, and then that grass doesn't get disturbed for a month to 2 months, depending on what season it is, until we rotate back to that pasture again.
Oh man, then that's all.
So that allows the grass to really recuperate. All that trampling is really valuable because it puts all that plant material back into contact with the dirt. All the bacteria and enzymes that are in the soil, there's lots of fungus activity down there. It reincorporates all that plant material back into the root layer.
Yep.
And so this can get into like pretty crazy soil science stuff.
Hey, I'm totally fascinated, man. Keep going.
What we're doing here is really, I mean, so we talk a lot about regenerative farming, and this is where this comes in. Grasslands capture carbon, place it in their root zones, place that carbon into the soil. Soil microbes and fungus networks start to carry that carbon deeper and deeper into the soil profile. Mm-hmm. So, like before Europeans came and started tilling up the Great Plains and causing dust bowls and things like that, right? There are places where the Great Plains soil, is several yards thick, right? The topsoil. Mm-hmm. And then, in the course of just a few hundred years, they managed to, waste all that topsoil. Pretty much every place that's been plowed has compromised topsoil. Because when you plow soil, you flip it over, you expose all those roots to the air, they die, bacteria come in, all that carbon gets released into the atmosphere. Agriculture is one of the biggest contributors to carbon in the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And so we want to put the carbon back in the soil. That's where it belongs. And when it goes into the soil, it becomes really just fuel for plants. And it becomes a structure. The carbon forms a structure that can support a lot of the soil life. It creates openings in the soil that permit water to infiltrate into the soil. So just so many of the problems we have in agriculture in our current climate situation, where we have flooding because soils aren't absorbing the amount of water that they should be absorbing, because we have so much tillage that's creating runoff. So many of these issues are related to just our grasslands being compromised. And so when we put the cattle on top of a pasture, let them graze it, let the pasture rest and recover, let it grow back, graze it again. This is mimicking some of the more natural cycles of herbivores on pasture, on grasslands. If you think of like the herds of bison or wildebeest or reindeer or whatever, continent you want to pick where you have your grazing animals, they come through, they graze an area, the wolves and the other lions are chasing them, so they move on, right? Mm-hmm. And then they come back later in the season, graze it again. So that's the model we're following. Yeah.
That is super fascinating. That let me just back up because I had a thought. Yeah. And I know you're going to have I think you'll have the word I'm looking for is where they till it, a farmer, the huge farms, they till it 1 year and then they put corn on it. Then 2 years they put hay on it, and 2 years they put corn on it. And I can't remember the name.
Crop rotation?
Is that okay? I couldn't remember the name. Yeah. But that doesn't do a damn thing. I mean, to my opinion, the timeline on that is you'd have to do that much longer of a period of time, wouldn't you? In your opinion?
Yeah, the old timers before the advent of like synthetic fertilizers, fertilizers and pesticides changed everything. Mm-hmm. But before those were available, they used to have very long rotations. So there would be corn and oats and maybe a few other crops that would go in, and you'd rotate them for a few years, but then it would have a long time, maybe 5 to 7 years in pasture or hayfield before it was tilled back again.
No, in your opinion,
now a lot of places just do continuous corn and soybeans like every year. That's on the same pasture, so it's being tilled up and blasted with pesticides and herbicides and the synthetic fertilizers, and it just renders the soil itself pretty much inert and prone to being blown away and washed away.
Yeah, it can only take so much beating, right?
Right.
Yeah. Now, in your opinion, if you till it for 2 years and let it go grass for 6 to 8, do you feel that is it better than nothing?
Yeah, I mean, so to some extent, we probably will always need to till some ground to make some crops, right? But and I'm not a crop guy, so I
Okay.
can't answer the specific question about how long it is. But yeah, I think in organic farming, which doesn't depend so much on those inputs, um, to be sustainable, you need to stretch out those rotations and have a lot more time with good plant matter over the top in permanent pasture or permanent hayfield.
Now, do you do much tilling?
We don't do any. We're strictly a pasture farm.
Okay, cool.
So
So that cuts down. Well,
Yeah.
that cuts down on cost of machinery as well, too, right?
That's right. Yeah, we've got one utility tractor. We've got one broken four-wheeler.
I saw that post.
We've got the Kia minivan, which we were using as out in the pasture yesterday.
I was just going to say, no, your
Yeah.
four-wheeler now is the Kia, right?
Yeah, we got a pickup truck.
I think they need to put that in the brochure
Yeah,
with the tire in the back, right?
yeah.
On hang on a second. I'm playing double duty here. I'm watching a monitor too with my son. So, what is your? So, do you do any? You don't do any processing on your farm, do you? You send it all that to a butcher?
The meat processing is all done by two different butchers. So we have a butcher about 15 minutes away from us who slaughters and butchers the chickens and turkeys, and then we have one about an hour and a half away that does the red meat.
Now, do you take your cattle live to it, or do you butcher on? Do you?
We truck them live.
Okay.
So in order to sell meat by the cut, we need to have it USDA processed in a plant with a USDA inspector, and that inspector needs to see the animal walk in live and healthy and see it be killed. And as anytime the meat is being cut, the inspector needs to be on site just to make sure that everything is done properly.
Now, do you think that butchering an animal when it's calm or all worked up, do you think there's a difference there in what it does to the meat?
I've heard from people like Temple Grandin that that's true. I don't know that. But I've never really riled up an animal and killed it. And then
I know, right? Get it all work. Sorry, baby, but we're gonna rile you up so we can do an experiment. No, that's not cool.
We try to handle them calmly, especially with big animals like cattle and pigs. Handling them calmly helps us. We don't want to be, walking down a corral with a crazy animal that weighs 5 times what I weigh or 10 times what I weigh.
They get a little upset, and an angry cow is nothing to be messing with. Yeah. I can tell you that from experience.
Yeah. Have you been kicked or trampled or
chased and kicked and everything else? So
yeah.
And the bad thing about a cow, between a bull and a cow when it charges you keeps its eyes open. So it'll follow. You try to run away, it'll follow you. A bull, puts its head down, charges.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's dealt with all that when I in my younger years. But one thing I do have a question: the whole fake meat industry. I got to get your opinion on this, obviously, because you're in the business you're in.
The real meat industry.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to put it. Not necessarily like the Impossible Burger. I'm not talking about that yet. I want to get your opinion on the genetically raised side of beef, like in a lab.
Yeah, lab grown meat.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, let's say I have
Don't be shy.
I have a lot of thoughts, and okay, here's, and I'm just going to shotgun them out. I'm not sure I'm going to lay them out in an orderly fashion here.
Yeah, it's all good.
But one of the real attributes I see in the way we raise meat at Wrong Direction Farm and other small farms like ours, right, is that anybody can produce this food, right?
What you're doing.
Right. So
Okay.
I came into this without any experience. I had to learn some things. I had to learn from a lot of other farmers, and it's like anything else. There were skills to learn, but there's no proprietary, patented, multi-billion-dollar investment required to become a farmer and produce food from grass that's growing right out in a pasture, right? Like there's very little specialized equipment required, right? There's very little specialized anything required that produces food that we know is nutritionally valuable and has some historical merits to it. So we take meat that is grown in situations that require laboratories. They require big tanks of genetically modified bacteria in order to produce the proteins and sugars that go into the solution that feeds this meat tissue that grows in the lab that becomes like this steak. Which, by the way, where's the feedstock for that stuff coming from? It's all coming from corn.
Feedstock for
those nutrient broths that are being fed into these labs. It's all being processed out of corn that's grown, in conventional genetically modified pesticide sprayed, herbicide sprayed corn. It takes some of the worst agricultural practices we have and continues to perpetuate them, moves the technology indoors into a place where I don't know what's going on in there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of invisible to the outside eye, that only billionaires have access to the technology. Yeah, I don't. I have no problem with veganism, with eating vegetables, with deciding that you do not want to participate in killing animals for food. I am very cautious about overly technical solutions to things that aren't necessarily even problems.
Wow, that's a good way to look at it.
I've also been thinking about a different angle. This applies both to the lab grown meats and to like the Impossible Burgers, which, the patented plant-based foods, but they're based on all these patents, and they also involve all these genetically modified bacteria to produce the heme proteins that give it that meaty taste. Supposedly, I haven't had one yet, but not really.
I can't take it. I don't know. I don't know if I can get myself to do that.
But one of the things I foresee is that the U.S. confinement, the factory farm in the U.S. have become so efficient that they're starting to displace factory farming in other countries, even countries that have very cheap labor. So the U.S. can dump relatively cheap chicken, especially the cuts that American consumers don't want. Like maybe American consumers want more breast and less drumsticks. So they dump drumsticks on poorer countries. And they can actually do that at a cheaper cost than the production would cost in those poorer countries.
Oh, so wait, hang on a second. So you're saying that a massive chicken farm operation in Nebraska knows that they can get so much more money for the breast because here in the United States, because that's what we prefer.
Right.
And then they end up selling the drumsticks and whatever pieces that aren't preferred here to other countries. That is cheaper than what that country can
produce it there.
Produce it. Wow. Yeah. Holy cow.
So like we destroyed the Haitian chicken market by just
doing that.
Chicken. I mean, it wasn't even very good. It was like chicken necks and just what we consider like the junky parts of chicken.
Yeah.
But we dumped it down there so cheap that it just could outcompete any of the local food. And when people want calories, they would buy that. So here's the scenario I've been thinking about. The U.S. confinement meat industry can produce meat so cheaply that we can still export it all over the world. We're exporting huge amounts of meat to China right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
is that in the same way you think? That
to China, we're sending a lot of pork, and we're sending a lot of beef there. We're sending all the cuts.
All the cuts, okay.
Not just some of the undesirable ones.
Okay.
Because it's kind of weird to think that we can produce something cheaper than China.
Right.
But I wonder about this. What's going to happen when these technology-based foods start getting exported around the world? Because I don't think that we'll displace the United States conventional meat industry right away. We'll probably just chip away more at some of the indigenous farming communities and continue to undermine them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about this as like a sort of a new food colonialism, where, over the years, powerful countries that own patents and things like that have been able to exploit that on poorer people that don't have the technology or the wealth to resist.
And that's anywhere in the world.
Right.
Yeah, and not just in their country.
If we can displace some other countries' meat supply, if you look at the companies that are investing in this artificial meat, it's all the companies that are currently big in the meat industry. Mm-hmm. So they're positioning themselves to continue in this. And I don't think that they intend to lose market share by transitioning to alternate meats. I think they intend to, increase their global market share.
Sure.
And I see this first as probably affecting some of the poorer countries, mm-hmm. where we'll dump cheap plant-based pseudo meats on them.
Well, I mean, almost as a test market, right?
Yeah.
Before giving it to a first world country.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
But I think, to continue that pattern of displacing some of the smaller farmers in those countries. And you see that pattern all the time, right? Those small farmers get kicked out of their farms.
Well,
they move to slums. They create the kind of, that rural to urban cycle that creates unrest.
Mm-hmm.
But, we keep feeding those sorts of systems.
Yeah. Well, there's certain people in certain offices that like where they're at and they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we get into that. But no, that is fascinating about the parts of the chicken being sent around. I didn't know that. And do you think they do that with cattle as well? I know you mentioned that, like going to China, they'll send all the cuts. But do they do that to other smaller countries with cattle?
Like I should say with like pork or other things, there are certain cuts that are more popular in certain parts of the world. And so the global network does balance out the carcass. So if the U.S. loves its bacon, and
I like bacon.
Some other part of the world might like some other cut specifically.
I see.
But with beef, it's probably. I know a lot of the beef are being sent as whole carcasses overseas, but I don't know, like, if there are specific cuts that are also being sent there.
Yeah. Now, going to your chickens, do you keep all the eggs and sell those as well?
We don't have egg layers anymore.
Oh, really? That's fascinating.
Yeah, we just raise meat chickens.
Okay.
So we butcher them long before they reach the maturity to lay eggs.
Now, is there a reason for that? Is some logistical
when they hit puberty,
issues?
they don't taste as good.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah.
They start getting tough. They have a richer taste, but it gets kind of ornery. And,
yeah. So in the masses, like huge chicken farms, I assume they do the same thing then?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And there are breeds of chickens that are better suited to laying eggs and some that are better suited to growing meat. So, I mean, just like with any breed, like you have cows that are better suited to milking versus ones that are just better at growing beef. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you know of a chicken industry, part of the industry where they'll use one chicken for both? They'll have it lay eggs for a while and then butcher it and sell it?
No.
So it's strictly one or the other.
Right.
Okay. And then
old laying hens, they are very tough birds. I like them. They're good for stews.
Okay.
But you have to cook them for a long time in order to soften them up.
You're not going to throw that breast on a sandwich and eat it, right?
No, you're not going to just like put it on the grill, because you won't be able to chew through it.
It'd have to be there for a while. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that is fascinating. Now, with the Impossible Burger, because it's plant-based, right?
Right.
And then what it takes to make that Impossible Burger with the plants and what it does to the environment, you hear people say that it's worse than actually raising a cow. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know what to say about the Impossible Burger. I would say that a lot of the statistics, like you look at statistics, right, and that people quote to prove anything.
Sure.
And it's so befuddling because you don't know what to believe, and you start digging into the sources, and it's just too confusing. And I don't know, so many things I have to just give up. But I know that the statistics that are often quoted for the damage that beef is doing to the world don't come anywhere close to anything that I see on our farm. And like there may be some farms out there that are just so terrible that they're using like hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water per pound of beef, or requiring dozens of acres per pound of beef or some other thing like that. But when I look at the resources that are used on our farm to grow beef, you think about the life cycle of these cattle. They're born next door. They're raised on pasture next door, or just on grass next door. They come over to our farm. They graze about 1 acre per cattle unit per year. That's kind of the number that we find works for our grazing.
Okay.
So 1 acre would support one head of beef per year. And they're grazing the grass that grows. The grass regrows. There's nothing that gets taken off that field. They drink rainwater that we catch in a pond.
All right.
They urinate that water back out onto the pasture. Because our pastures are vegetative, that water soaks back into the soil. So all we've done is intercepted that rainwater in a pond, passed it through a cow, then let it soak back into the soil. So there's no lost water. There's no lost resources. I mean, there's some water used in washing up the carcass at the butcher. Right. There's a little bit of fuel used in trucking the cow to the butcher. But I mean, in terms of carbon footprint, in terms of water usage, in terms of environmental degradation, I just don't see anything. I think it's a regenerative system rather than something that's exploitative.
Now, do you think that when they talk about that, they're talking about these cattle farms, I don't know, maybe in Texas, where it's 50 acres of cattle that are so packed in tight?
Right, the feedlots.
Yeah. I mean, are they looking at that compared to what you do? Obviously.
They probably are. So in a feedlot situation, you have cattle. Usually the feedlots are placed in deserts because they don't get muddy with all those cattle in them. Right. It keeps, when things get muddy, then you get lots of flies and things get messy. And so they found that raising cattle in huge numbers works best in the deserts. Raising them in the deserts, obviously there's not much water, so they're pulling water out of deep aquifers and often not getting the water to infiltrate back in because the ground isn't absorbing that water.
Right.
So Yeah, there are some pretty severe environmental consequences with cattle feedlots, and of course they're feeding them. In the U.S., it's usually corn that's grown on often irrigated pastures as well. So those, or not pastures, but or irrigated cornfields. So that's also withdrawing water.
Yeah, and then they're saying the methane gas from these feedlots is worse than cars, worse than the pollution that cars are
Yeah.
putting out. But how many are those compared to what you do? Like, do you believe that there's a balance of some sort?
Yeah. So with methane, there's a few interesting perspectives on that. So the methane from cattle, they do, as they burp when they're chewing their cud,
Sure.
as they burp out that grass that's fermenting in their rumen, they're they definitely are emitting methane. And the thing to think about, I guess, to put it in perspective, is to look at how many cattle are in the U.S. right now, how many cattle are in the world. Look at the estimates for how many bison were roaming the plains before we killed most of them. And, is it really true that the number of cattle, the number of cattle we have are creating this much damage? Where we know these methane emitting ruminants have always been part of
the cycle,
natural
right?
ecosystems. Yeah.
Yeah.
So our cattle are emitting methane, that's for sure.
Naturally.
But we're also, because we're also grazing them on pastures, our pastures are capturing many of those same greenhouse gases, like I talked about earlier, and storing them deep into the soil. And it's been really interesting to look at our soil over the years. So we've been grazing cattle. I mean, the first year we had 4 cattle. I think we're up to about 50 right now.
Nice.
But we've been grazing cattle on our farm for the past 11 summers now. And looking at, when I dig holes out in the pasture, I find that the plant roots are growing much deeper now than they used to.
Oh, that's so you looked at that when you first took the farm over?
Yeah.
And
so when I was digging holes for fences and things like that. And
so you didn't purposely go out and look at it. You just saw
no,
it when
this is not like a natural survey, but it's just like incidental work. And I was digging a trench for a water line, and I was 5 feet below the surface, getting well below the frost line for the water line, and there were grass roots still down there, and they were still going down below 5 feet.
And this was recently?
Yeah, this was last fall.
Wow, that's 5 feet.
Yeah, so we know that our plants are capturing more and more of this atmospheric carbon. So there's been several studies, and I guess anytime I hear anybody say there's studies done, I'm like, okay, well, where you're getting your studies from?
Sure.
But these are studies I've seen that have shown that farms that farm the way we do actually can capture more of the atmospheric greenhouse gases than the cattle belch out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it has the ability to catch more than what you're putting out. So now you're at a negative, or 0, right?
Yeah.
Now, does the same work with the chickens?
So chickens don't emit as much methane. So a lot of the methane comes from animals who are ruminants: cattle, sheep, goats.
Oh, okay.
Deer. A lot of the big herbivores, right?
Sure,
those are the animals that have several stomachs. Chickens, pigs, those are single-stomached animals, and they have digestive systems more like ours. So instead of taking in huge quantities of grass and then letting them ferment in the first stomach, what chickens do is they just digest things more directly like we do. Chickens do eat grass. They like to eat grass, but they don't eat it as the main part of their diet.
That just helps push things through, right? Because them eating pebbles and stuff, right, to help them digest.
Yeah, they eat stones.
Yeah.
They eat the stones help them grind things up. The fiber in the grass helps them digest things, and they are definitely getting nutrients from the from the grass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There have been some tests. There's not a lot of tests done on these pasture raised chickens, just because that's not where the industry is, and small farmers don't have a lot of funds. But the tests that have been done have shown nutritional differences in some of the vitamins and mineral contents in pasture raised chickens. So it would definitely indicate that the grasses are having an effect on their diet.
Okay. And now your chickens strictly grazing chickens. You don't give them any supplemental feed?
No, we do. We give them certified organic grain, and we give them rocks to eat, and they eat lots of rocks.
Yeah.
And all the grass and crickets and grasshoppers they can catch.
Can you explain why a chicken eats rocks? Some people might not know.
So, and you ought to see the rocks that the turkeys eat. Well, I just buy gravel from the quarry, actually, and we put out 5-gallon buckets of driveway gravel, and they just eat that stuff down.
Seriously?
Yeah. So because birds do not have teeth, right? They just have the beak. They pass it down into their crop, which is like at the base of their throat, where it's just basically a short-term holding place, and then it goes down into their stomach and their gizzard. And their gizzard is where they store all the rocks, and that's where everything gets mashed up. And then it passes on to their intestines, where a lot of the nutrients can get extracted. So,
because the rocks help mash everything up to get passed through, right?
Right. Yeah. The rocks work as grit to digest things. So yeah, we give the chickens some small granite grit. And, the turkeys get pea stone, like driveway pea stone.
That's great, dude. I didn't even think of.
Yeah.
I knew turkeys did the same thing, but I didn't know they ate that big of one.
So they're and they are fed grains. So it's sometimes a misconception. People come to me asking for grass-fed chicken, and I can give you grass-fed beef, but I can't give you grass-fed chicken. Chickens can't live on grass alone. So if you think back to their ancestors, like I said, they were a jungle fowl.
Yeah.
They were, and you think about like what most birds eat. They're pecking around for seeds, for bugs, and that's what chickens are eating. So we're giving them seeds, and they find their own bugs. Right now, the pastures are just exploding with grasshoppers and crickets.
Oh, yeah.
And then like everywhere you go, the chickens are zooming after them. It's pretty fun to watch.
And most people don't know that I found this out a long time ago when I was young, that they're a hell of a mouser.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. People are like, what? And I go, hell, man, a chicken will chase after a mouse with not even, man, they can catch them things like no problem.
Yeah, I've seen them catch mice, snakes, and frogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I were little, they would probably chase me. I mean, you look at them; they're not that different than a velociraptor, right?
I was just gonna say they're little dinosaurs, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, they're looking at you with their beady eyes, and they're like sizing you up. Like, could I take them? Could I take them?
Yeah, I think I can eat that. Just lay down, man. I'll get the soft parts.
Yeah.
Now, growing up, we had the old folklore of a chicken knows if it's going to rain or not. If it stays inside, it's going to rain.
Maybe you had smart chickens.
No, yours don't.
Dumb ones. Mine don't know about rain.
I don't know, man. You got to be loving that kind of life. I bet you there's days that you say, "Fuck this, man. What the hell am I doing?" But do you think that? I mean, most of the time you're just loving life, happy, and everything is great.
I do like it. I like it a lot. I like the life. So we wanted to get into this for the food that we were going to eat. We wanted to get into this for the challenge of having a lifestyle that would continuously give us things to be busy on, things to work on, things to work on as a family. We wanted to give our kids opportunities to do hard things. And
that's great.
We wanted to connect into a community of neighbors who are kind of in it together. We're in a farming area, and so I think in all those aspects, it's really been satisfying. to eat the food that we've produced, that we're confident in, to do really hard things and to learn new skills, to see the kids taking on jobs and becoming competent in their own right, solving problems on their own, and then to connect with the neighbors and, be able to be helpful to the neighbors, to be able to be the ones who need help from the neighbors. It's great.
Oh, dude, it's an amazing way to grow up. I grew up in that type of community, and people are like, "Oh, it's hard and that's hard work and all that," but that's life stuff that they're going to carry through their whole life, and nothing will be a challenge. Sure, there'll be challenges, but they're like, "I got this." I'd assume anyway.
Were you surrounded by dairy farms?
Yeah, we were dairy farmers. Yeah, dairy farmers, and then. Again, my family farm burnt down. I helped my cousin, my uncle, and some local every summer, doing hay and plowing, and we in the fall you put insulage in the silo, and all summer long you put hay in the hay mow, and and being young and riding around in a hay wagon, getting 100-pound hay bales thrown at you in the hay wagon, you got to stack them. And then you crawl up in the hay mow and get them thrown at you up there, and you got to stack them up there. You handle a hay bale.
Your socks and underwear are stuffed with hay chaff, and
and then your
wrists are all torn up.
Yeah, the wrists got all these little dots all over them from grabbing hay, right? And I think you handled a hay bale about 10 times before you actually fed it to any cattle. So I don't know how efficient that is labor-wise, but that's what it was, and awesome stories and awesome way to grow up. I wasn't huge into it. I didn't live it every day for long, forever like you guys do. But I was involved with it pretty heavy when I was young and into my teens, and then got jobs outside of that, and then, moved to Colorado, and that was a whole other story. But
was everyone encouraging you and the other kids your age to just get away?
No, my parents, were like, "Get out of here, man. Leave. There's more in the world." And I came to them one day and I said, "I'm going to Colorado." And they said, "See ya."
Yeah.
So, okay. And I left. That was like the conversation.
It seems like the story on a lot of farms, or farming areas, is just to kick everybody out. Say, don't come back. You don't want to be here.
Yeah. And then, and it was again, we just knew that area and that industry in that area is dying at that point, and when the ship is sinking, you can be the captain and go down with it, or you can be like, I'm going to go try something else. And and my parents saw that, when I was 14, 15, they're like, the world's a big place. Get out and see it. If you ever want to come back here, it'll always be here. But, I took my wife back a couple years ago, Val, and it's not the same place that I grew up in. Woo! Got taken over by the Oneida Indians.
Okay.
They got a big casino up there, and they pumped a bunch of money into the place, and just a different environment altogether. There's no farms left. They bought up a bunch of farms and use them as community centers and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, but I think there was one farm that was just hanging on, and it's pretty big size, and they ended up with a milking parlor back when I was still there, and I don't know if they're still around, but yeah, quite a thing. Farming, I like it. We're gonna, if you'll have us, we'll definitely come up, dude.
Certainly, yeah.
We're excited.
We like to show people around.
Yeah,
just we always say, bring your boots and bring low expectations.
Hey man, I just like, and Val's all about it too. We just love that kind of environment, and we don't live it every day. So, it's exciting for us to be in it for a day,
Yeah.
And then you get out of, for us, we get out of it, you live it every day, but we're excited.
We find those, like having visitors on the farm, to be really useful in the questions we get from people. And, they can range from the most naive question to the most insightful one, but just hearing from people, hearing the questions people have about food and how it's produced, how the animals live, what the cycles are of life on the farm. It's really helpful to us, as we try to, with our farm and with our, meat delivery business, we're trying to connect directly with people. And we often don't know how to speak because we assume so many things, like people know this is what this means. This is why a certain aspect of our protocol for raising chickens, why we value it. But we don't always do a great job of connecting that to a person who's never touched a chicken before.
Right. So a lot of this conversation we've been having, I knew exactly what you were talking about, and I could go into it too as well. But I like to having you explain it, because not a lot of people do know it, and they're just not exposed to it. That's all it is. They just, if you drop me in a rainforest,
right? Yeah, it isn't a problem of ignorance. It's just a problem of lack of exposure.
That's it. Yeah. And and I'd love to. I don't know. I think it's just in our DNA as a human to grow things and explore and and do that type of thing. So what you guys are doing, I just think it's built in our DNA, and whatever you believe in. We're 500,000 years old, and sure, we ended up being hunters and gatherers starting. And then, we moved in and figured out that if we hold this plot of land and raise some animals and kill it and eat it, it's easier than running around 10 acres or 100 acres of forest and try to kill it. But I just think it just brings you to nature. It just feels so good to be on a farm like yours. I haven't even seen your farm, but I know of it because that's why I grew up too. But I don't know. I just think that, when your hands get dirty and, I just think that's built in us, and that's why it feels good to be on a place like that.
Yeah.
So I want to bring my son up and throw him in a pile of manure and see how he does. Put a shovel in his hand. Don't be scared, man.
Get him some good good bacteria in his system to
that's it. Yeah, get him
inoculate him from the next disease, right?
I think that's why I don't get sick very much, because I was exposed to growing up.
Yeah.
My immune system's like, whatever, dude. Next. Probably you guys too, and your kids. Woo.
Right.
Imagine your kids. They're going to grow up with a hell of a constitution, right?
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Then we're going to close this up, man. But how long? Well, it shows it up there, don't it? Damn it. I was going to ask you how long you think we've been talking.
I think it's 50 minutes and 57 seconds.
Before I had the damn timer up there, I'd ask people, and they're like, 40 minutes? But it just, good conversation goes, time goes flying by. But you have a wife and how many kids?
3 kids.
3 kids?
Yeah. So on the farm, Rachel does all the beef cattle tasks. And my son, AJ, takes care of the chickens out in the pasture.
Okay, cool.
My daughter, Allie, she's 14. And she 15? She's 14. And she takes care of the turkeys and the dog. And Harry, he's 12. And he takes care of the young chickens. So when they're just hatched, they spend a couple of weeks in a warm enclosed place during the time that their mother would normally be sitting on them. They can't be exposed to like the outdoor temperatures because their bodies haven't learned to regulate their own heat yet. So we keep them in what we call a brooder.
And they got a heat lamp
for them in there. Yeah.
Right. So like a box with a heat lamp on it.
Yeah. Well, we've actually done, if we bought some old grocery trailers, tractor trailer, 50-foot trailers, they're insulated. And we put heaters in there.
Damn.
And
that's
that
volume.
creates, it's a spot. So like there's no, because they close up, they're all tight. They've got the aluminum lining. You can't get like rats or other things in there to go and attack the chicks.
Damn, dude, that's awesome. And that's a lot. You can put a lot of chicks in a trailer.
Yeah, we don't even use all the space in there, but it gives them plenty of room to run around. So, we don't want them cramped up, even though they have to be inside. We wanted to give them the most amount of room they can take advantage of.
Keep the phrase of free range going, right?
Yeah.
Damn, that's cool in a trailer. Never thought of that. Us growing up, and when I had chickens in Colorado, the thing was about as big as my kitchen table, and I'd have 15 or 20 of them in there because some of them are gonna not make it. And do you know that we got them delivered through the Postal Service?
Okay.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
Now I didn't know that at the
We've done
time.
that occasionally. Normally we meet the guy from the hatchery. He drives them up to us in his truck, but yeah.
Yeah, in Colorado, my ex-wife's like, I got some chickens coming. I'm like, so am I gonna, of course my thought is I'm seeing this old beat up flatbed, pickup come down with a bunch of cages on the back, with a steak rack on the back. And she's like, hey, the chickens came, they're on the front porch. And I'm like, what? I go out and there's a box full of chicks. And I was like, how'd that come? She goes, the mail. The postman brought it? Yep, the postman brought it. Okay. All right. And some of them didn't make it, because I think you bought like 2 dozen, but they only charge you for like 13 because they know that a bunch weren't going to make it.
Really?
Yeah. But they were fun to have. So, all right, man. Well, dude, I truly enjoyed our conversation. Hope you had a good time.
I did. Thanks. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And just hang out just for 1 second. We're going to end this, but I got some things I'll talk to you before or after we hang up. All right?
Sounds good.
All right, man.
All right, thanks, Walt.
Thanks again, buddy.
Yep.
I told you that guy was fascinating, right? You want to continue to see what he has to say? I highly recommend that you jump on his website and sign up for his farm blog. I enjoy reading that every month. It's a great read. Link is in the show notes along with his Instagram. He posts some really great stuff. Would love for you to follow him on Instagram as well. Listen, I'm going to get you out of here because I know you got shit to do. But remember, liverishi.com. Use the code word table. Let them know I sent you. You're looking 50% off. My website, waltskitchentable.com. Would love for you to check all that out and hit me up with any questions or just to say, what's up? But remember, when I say have a great day, the motherfucker is silent. Until next time.